Hey guys, this is the Leadership to Wealth podcast, and I'm here with my guest today, Karel Gomez. Karel, nice to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me, Neil. It's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show.
Thank you. Well, I want to get into talking about your business success, how you've built in that, and all that. But I just want to get into first, really, because we're primarily about leadership, and so I want to talk about what do you see as the impact or role of, say, your father in your life growing up, and how you see that playing out to who you are now and how you've built yourself up.
So, unfortunately, my father passed away many years ago. I was 23, but he was a very important figure in my life. I grew up in show business, believe it or not. My father was a musician and a singer. He was the true version of Ricky Ricardo from the I Love Lucy show. My father was the host of the Cuban Tropicana Club. He was that Ricky Ricardo in the flesh in the early '60s, and that's where he met my mother. But my father was a hard worker. Everything he did the best he could at it, no matter what role he was in. Living in a country that turned communist in during his prime years as a showman, he realized and he had to experience life as someone who was not in favor of the government. And so he was taken from show business into the fields to cut sugarcane just because he was not in favor of the communist government. But no matter what they did, he persevered and overcame and just kept going. Never was broken. No one could break him. And so what I got from my father was that same don't break personality where you can beat me, but you're not going to beat me. All right.
Yeah.
You can't break me. And so I've used that in my perseverance in my business and my financial growth in life is to overcome the obstacles as they come. They do not divert me from my goal, whichever that goal may be. And business specifically is to grow the largest company that I can build.
Hmm. Wow. Can I just ask a quick question, because I think it's relevant, especially for some things that we're dealing with here in Canada. Did your father ever express or share a little bit about what that was like, in the regime change and going from what was before to communist? Did he ever talk about that at all?
Yeah, quite a bit. My father was very displeased
Yeah.
with the government change because he was censored. Being a showman, an onstage singer, entertainer, and joke maker as entertainers on stage, you can imagine you do all of the above. He was censored. There was things he had to stop saying, things he could no longer joke about. He could not make jokes of the government, things he did before.
Yeah.
So that started to really hinder his ability to do his job. And so
Yeah.
that's when he decided this is not for me and renounced the government. But when he was on radio and he did his live show and then he was on radio, and on radio they really um, censored, is the word I was looking for. They censored him quite a bit,
Yeah.
and then as the regime started to really take strong hold in Cuba, things just started to disappear. Supplies,
Yeah.
food, everything was rationed, and it really became difficult to lead the same kind of life that you led prior to Fidel Castro, and so it was a very uncomfortable and very difficult time and thing to get accustomed to. Today Cuba's been communist for so long that people are just used to living in that regime, but it's still not a good regime.
Right. Wow. That is so interesting, considering that our current prime minister here in Canada, um, Justin Trudeau, his father, of course, was good friends with Fidel Castro, and there's even been speculation that Justin isn't Pierre's son. He's actually Fidel's son. But that's we're not even going to go down that one. But we are actually seeing certain things here politically where there's a bill right now called C11 where they're actually talking about. They don't call it a censorship bill, but it literally is talking about censoring some of the things on air and what's allowed. So that's a very unique perspective for me to hear. What
Look, I come from a family. Not only my father was affected, my mother, my uncle. God, thank God he's still alive. He's 84 years old. He spent 30 years as a political Cuban prisoner in underwear. He refused to wear a prisoner uniform, much like the rest of his counterparts, prisoners with him, political prisoners, because they opposed that regime that was so horrible. Still is, right? The Cuban people are limited to almost everything through this government. And when people talk about communist government, it's socialism as equality. It's not. It's a bunch of BS. Quite honestly, equality means everybody's poor and everybody's bad. That's all that means. And for my family, it was a direct hit. Now my uncle lives with us today here in America. He lives alongside with my mom, and they live a great life here, free. But Cuba was, that communist thing. Don't let anyone fool you. Socialism was not good.
Yeah. I think a lot of people they have a disconnect. They don't understand how it looks or how it'll really affect you. And a lot of people have this ideology that somehow it's fair and it's good for everybody, and we want everyone to have something, not realizing what the overall impact is. And so I appreciate you talking about that.
And I can get into it in detail if you like, but I don't think that's what your show is about today anyway.
It's not, but it definitely affects on the finance side, right? On making money in that. And it's relevant for me because I can tell you that actively I have investors that are a whole number of people that are currently worried about what the environment here is in Canada and how it'll change, because the steps that are occurring, the things that are happening, they are really looking at it as this is a massive move towards that. Even if everyone, like, nobody says this is what we're going to do beforehand, you just move in that direction, and then all of a sudden everyone wakes up and they find out they're actually in a communist country.
The thing is, you don't realize you're in a socialist environment until it's too late.
Right.
And then it takes an act of God to act of war, really, to reverse it. And so you've got to pay attention to the signs like you're doing, like you just mentioned, and don't let it happen. Vote in the right way, because socialism or equality isn't equal.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we have right now is too many people. And so it actually falls into this area of leadership and wealth, because a lot of people have lost the connection to those life lessons. And, a lot of the lessons that you're even going to provide to us here and share with us from your own experience, people have lost that connection to the hard work, to the effort that's involved, even to what you were just saying earlier about, people can beat you, but they can't break you, right? Is a lesson that people don't want to teach right now. Our school systems don't want to teach that right now, because somehow that's not good. Because what happens if someone gets beaten on, and that's not good for them. And but we realize that when children don't develop that ability to be resilient, to defend themselves, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, then it makes it harder for them to be resilient as they go further on in their life, whether it be a relationship, whether it be a business, whether it be a job, whether it be health, whatever it is. There are just certain lessons that don't get built up, right?
Look, it's the most relevant analogy I can make. When your body is attacked by a virus, it creates a defense mechanism. It creates a war to fight that virus. How can you not teach your kids? And I'm not saying teach your kids to fight, but you have to teach your kids to defend themselves, because
Yeah.
there's bad people out there. No matter how good we try to make this world, there's bad people out there, and those people are going to cross their paths, and they're going to have to learn how to defend themselves, whether it's verbally, politically, financially, or physically, if need be. But you've got to build that resiliency and be able to defend, because people will try to hurt you in many ways. Again, it may not be physically, but there's other ways that they will try to hurt you as you grow up and life happens. And you have to build that resiliency, just like you said, Neil.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, my kids are all teenagers now, but when they were younger, and one would be like, oh, my son, one beating up on the other, and he's like, he's hitting me. Good, hit him back.
That's right.
Now my wife didn't agree with it, but I was like, no, you guys need to fight. I promoted it, and she didn't agree with it, but I said, they out there cannot be the first time that they ever have to deal with conflict, right?
Oh, absolutely.
In here, we can create a safe environment, let them have conflict, let them go through that, let them learn how to make up, how to have disagreements, and so that out there isn't the first time that
I have two daughters. One's 20, one's 14. They fight like cats and dogs. It's normal course of life. I have my sister and I, when we were growing up, oh my God, did we ever get into some fights? Her and I, and I'm not promoting or condoning fighting. I'm just saying, between siblings, that's what you do as a kid. Then when you grow up, you try not to fight too much, but you may end up in some fights too.
Yeah, but you have to have a certain amount of respect for it.
Yeah.
To know, right? Otherwise, you'll put yourself into situations where you can really be hurt. And I think you actually, we were sharing beforehand, we were talking about your name and some of what you have dealt with, with that. I can say, with my name, first of all, people would see me and they'd think, oh, it can't be Neil. It's got to be something different because this guy's colored. And how do we say that? And they would try and pronounce it in some funny way. And then my last name, I actually got the nickname for a while, Dr. Seuss, because or is it Susie to Susie, or they wouldn't know. And so,
wow,
now for you, I mean, we were just talking, obviously, when people look at your name, rather than thinking of Superman and calling you Karel, they were probably calling you Karel.
Yeah. And as a kid growing up, I hated it. I did not want to be called a girl's name, so I was called Karel, and I would get so upset. And sometimes I get into fights with kids. I'm talking elementary school, right?
Yeah.
That I will get into fights because, hey, I'm not a girl. Don't call me Karel. It's funny. Today I get advertisement for women's underwear because they think, hey, Karel, women's underwear for you, because they think it's a girl. And so, but as a kid, I had a rough time with it. Today, it doesn't bother me, but it is Karel, not Karel. And it's not a girl's name; it's a guy's name. And so, that's just.
Well, I appreciate that, because one of the things that I learned to appreciate being when I was younger, elementary school, and people saying my name, even into high school, people saying my name wrong all the time, and having bosses when I was working that still would say all sorts of things. I really learned the value of someone's name. I used to just pass it off, and then I realized this is the sound that this person's mother would make when calling them. And they say that to a person, their name is the most beautiful sound in the world. And so I really think it's important, and it's a sign of honor to be able to say someone's name the way that it's supposed to be said.
Absolutely.
That's what they've.
I agree. I think it's definitely the most recognizable sound that a human being from anywhere in the world can recognize, is the sound of their name. Even when someone says a name that sounds like theirs, people immediately look, hey, was that for me?
Yes.
It is such a, your ear is so in tune to that sound of your name
Yes.
that no matter where it's said, you can hear it. You can
Yes.
hear it. It's incredible.
Yes.
Anyway,
So you said, you know, your name would be pronounced differently in your language or for Cubans. Can you how would you pronounce it? How would your dad pronounce it?
Karel,
Karel. Karel?
Karel.
Karel.
So
Karel.
just so
Gotta
you
roll that
understand,
R.
that is uh, it's basically uh, a Russian name, or the Russia region Russian name, and it means Carl or Carlos. That's all it is.
Okay.
So it's
I
Carl in Russian. And why do I have a Russian name? Being born in Cuba, growing up through age of 10. Anyway, being born in Cuba, really, there was a strong Russian presence at the time,
yes.
Soviet Union, really.
Yes. Yes.
And so a lot of kids had, you know, Russian names. My sister's name is Raisa. Raisa, if you remember back in Gorbachev, his wife's name was Raisa, right? So it's a Russian name. We both got Russian names.
Right, right. Wow. Now that's interesting considering how opposed your father was to the regime.
Yeah. Well, my father didn't pick the name. My mom did, and it was because there was a Russian singer or Czech Republic at the time singer named Karel Go or Karel Go,
Yes.
right? That was popular in Cuba. And so she figured since my last name is Gomez and be close to Karel Gomez, Karel Go, and hence the story. A lot
I
of people
love it.
were given my name in 1972.
Oh my goodness, I love it. I used to work with the government, and when I was working with the government here, you know, I used to see a lot of people, and I got to see a lot of names, and it was always interesting to me to ask people how they got their names, and I found out that a lot of kids were a lot of guys were named after someone that their mom had a shining for, some
Yeah,
actor, and
absolutely.
I thought they probably didn't tell your dad that, did they? They were attracted to
Absolutely.
the Robert Redford or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's they were hoping that their boy would look like their idol,
Yes.
and I look nothing like that man from the 70s. But
Right, right.
anyway, you know, there's something that I do have a connection to Canada. When I left Cuba, we left Cuba in 1983, January of 1983 to be exact, and we left Cuba via Canada. So we flew from Havana, Cuba to Toronto.
Yeah.
And so just picture this, right? I'm a 10-year-old kid in a t-shirt in 84, 85-degree tropical weather. I get on an airplane that is controlled environment, right? Fly for 3 hours. And when the doors open, I'm in 15-degree weather and snowing, freezing weather. I just couldn't comprehend that the world was so different. All my life, I only knew a tropical island, and all of a
Right.
sudden, I'm in snow that's a foot deep, and I didn't want to put on the jacket. I was like, no, I don't need this. And then the airport doors open, Toronto International, the doors open, and that wind hit me. I almost fell back. I said, give me the jacket. It was so cold, so cold. I hated the cold weather. So we lived in Toronto for a year,
Oh
um,
wow.
and then we moved. We made our way down to much more tropical weather that we were used to, and I've lived here in South Florida ever since.
Oh wow, that's funny. That's similar story to us as well. Now we actually came from. I was born in Kuwait in the Middle East, and same thing. My dad came in shorts and a t-shirt, and we arrived in February in Canada, and it was freezing cold. He got sick, got off the plane, of course, you know, freezing
Uh,
cold, and then we came here, and we actually stayed in Toronto until I ended up in my early 20s, ended up moving out east and getting married and stuff like that. But you guys, of course, made that move further south, and there's a lot of Canadians that like to do that move and come
Yeah.
down there. Was that always the plan? What was the impetus to make the change from Toronto to the
Well,
States?
we had no family in Canada, with
Yeah,
the exception of our stepdad, who was the one who got us there.
yeah.
Stepdad at the time, he's passed since, and so the all our family lived here, and so my mom wanted to be close to the family. So it was always the plan that we would try and make our way down to South Florida
Mm,
when we legally could.
yeah.
So when we were
That-
legally able to travel, which was in a year's time, then we did.
Yeah. Well, it's too bad. We might have ended up seeing one another in the clubs or something had you stayed in
Yeah.
Toronto. But okay, so you head down there. Life is completely different from what you've grown up with, what you experienced for a year here in Canada, and you're growing up, and you're probably even getting into some fights there too, still about your name. But now tell me, how did all of that lead into to getting into business? Like, was that you went straight from school into business? How did you make that shift?
Uh, it's a very long road. Look, I grew up when we got here to South Florida. My mom, very within the year, separated, so she became a single mother with two kids,
Wow.
living in South Florida. Right, we grew up pretty poor, but pretty humble and honest. Right, clean household, a lot of love, but very poor.
Yeah.
And so my mom's car we bought with 200 pennies, her very first car, had no brakes. You knew she was coming, so you got out of the road because she'd start braking 2 blocks away so she can park at the house. Very poor. But again, resiliency, right? We talked about in the beginning of the show, and what that taught me was I never wanted to be poor again. I don't find anything good about being poor except it humbles you, yes. And there's a lot of great people who unfortunately are not financially don't have financial freedoms. But I don't want to be poor. Let's put it out there. I did not want to be poor. I grew up poor. I didn't like it. I don't want to be poor. And so I quickly at a very age, at the age of 12, I started working, right? I would walk to the supermarket and carry people's bags for quarters so that I can make money. And then, I remember I had to give all that money to my mom to help pay for the rent. But it taught me work, right? Eventually, uh, through different jobs, I end up in the phone company at AT&T. Back then, it was Bell South. 17, turning 18, 1992, I get my first job in the phone company as a service rep. And it it solidified me in my telecommunications career because I spent the next 17 years in the phone company at AT&T, right? From Bell South to AT&T. And I held different roles there. And so I learned communications, which is the industry that I'm in, but I still was not planning on having my own business. I always had an entrepreneur mind and try to do things on the side, sell some real estate and things of that nature. But I stuck to the corporate world. But after I retired from AT&T, um, I went on to work for CenturyLink for 4 years, and from there on to Windstream, all communications companies here in the U.S. And eventually, I found an opportunity to work for a company, a contractor that did work for the service providers, and they wanted me to come run their company and through my relationships help grow the business. And when I went to do that, that bug of owning my own business really hit me, and so that was a company that was zero employees, zero revenues when I started there to run the company in January 2013. Or very little revenues. They have maybe $900,000 in a year in revenues as a small business. And by the time I left them in mid 2015, they were doing just under $40 million in revenue.
Wow.
And I did that. And I did that through my business model of growing a small business fast that I learned while being there, right? Of course, my relationships and communications helped me to do that. But what I learned was, hey, I can do this on my own. So when I left them, I came here and I bought 50% of this company, which was again 4 employees, 5 employees, between 4 and 6. In the whole office, the whole company was an office smaller than the one I'm sitting in now. And that was September of 2015 when I bought. And within 3 years, we had over 400 employees working in 20 states, doing well over $30 million in revenues. And again, that's when I realized that my model really worked because now I've done it twice. And not only that, but it's not that difficult. And so my drive, my perseverance, all of that together with my skills in my industry helped me to put together the model. But I can tell you that the model I use, anyone can use to grow their business quickly. And then, you get into the 4Ds, which I want to talk about if I can, which are the roots of any entrepreneur business owner. And so I don't know if you want to get into that now or you want to talk about what question? How do
I
you
know.
want to?
I'd love to hear this because I'm there. I'm very curious to hear how you created that model to build it up and scale. That this is fascinating.
So we'll start with the 4Ds, right?
Yeah.
Or let me start before the 4Ds. Let me say this: an entrepreneur is someone who is always looking to better themselves from where they are today, right? That, in my opinion, is what a true entrepreneur is, and they do it through the creativity of creating business opportunities for themselves,
Yeah.
right? If you don't have that kind of personality, it doesn't work to grow a business. You got to have the personality. But if you do have the personality, you feel like you're an entrepreneur at heart, then the 4Ds come into play, which are discipline, determination, dedication, and desire. By the way, I did not come up with these 4Ds. These are not my original words. They have been said by others. Some folks use 6Ds. I don't even know what the other two are. But these 4Ds, I did not get them off a book. I got them off of my experience. And I was sitting one day thinking about what got me here. And I realized that it was those 4 words that got me here. And I can tell you real quickly, and discipline, first and foremost. You have to have the discipline to stick to what you want to do. And what you want to do, we'll call it is your goal, right? So whatever your goal is, and that doesn't matter really. Your goal could be anything. Okay. If you want to be a clown, that's your goal, right? But you have to be disciplined. And that means that nothing outside of your goal comes first or before your goal. And that's very tough to do because you have family, you have friends, you have your things that you want to do in life outside of your goal. And you have to be disciplined to make sure that they come second. And anyone who is a true builder of something knows that what they're building has to come first. And you don't want to hurt people on the way, but your family has to be supportive of that goal and understanding that that goal is for the betterment of all, correct? But the goal has to be first. So discipline to stick to that. You have to be determined, which means no matter what obstacles, what fights you have to get into, what things are put in front of you to keep you from your goal, okay, you are determined to overcome them and continue chasing your goal, correct? Then you have to have determination, discipline, and the dedication next, because they're in order. Dedication. You have to be dedicated primarily to your goal. So if my dedication is to hanging out with my buddies or going fishing, living in South Florida because I want to have fun, then my goal will not come first. And so then my goal will not be as successful as it could be. You have to be dedicated to your goal, fully dedicated. fully dedicated.
Yeah.
And lastly, you have to have the desire, the passion to reach your goal. You have to want it more than anything in the world. Correct? So you have to have those four things to become successful. Most small business owners have the one of the four D's or two or three, but not all four, right? They may have the desire, they may have the want to be a large business, but they don't have the discipline, they don't have the determination, or they may not have the dedication. Dedication means you're always working on your goal. You're always working on your goal. If I'm on vacation, I'm working on my goal. And today, my goal and your goal changes, and we'll talk about that real quick, but I'm always working on my goal no matter where I am. No matter where I am, I'm always working on my goal. If I'm out on my boat, I'm working on my goal. If I'm out with a family at dinner, I'm working on my goal. You say, well, you're always working. When do you have time to enjoy your life? No, I enjoy chasing my goal. That's my passion. And so I'm not giving up freedoms to chase my goal. My goal is my fun, it's my passion. And so I don't give up anything because I like to work towards my goal. And so small business owners have to understand that if they really want to grow their business, then those sacrifices must be made, and they must become not a sacrifice. They must become what you want to do. It has to be what you want. If it's a sacrifice, then it's not a goal. It is an obligation. And obligations are there. We all have them, but they're just that, obligations. They're not the things you want, right? No one wants to pay bills. They're an obligation you have to pay. But I want to work towards my goal. I just don't want to work to work, right? I don't want to go and dig a trench all day. There's no goal there. You get it?
Well, listen, I think what you're saying right there is, like, when you start talking about sacrifice, I was like, and then you clarified it. If it's, if it's really what you want, then it's no longer sacrifice.
Exactly.
And I was like, you probably saw me even jump up. I was like, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And it's really something to help people understand that there is balance, and that's the balance. that becomes the balance, right? You become passionate about something, you become excited. If you're a builder, right? If you enjoy building something, then and I say this to people when they're telling me about hard work, and this is what I'm hearing you say. You correct me if I'm wrong, but I say this to people. I said, if you've got a this is all hard work to you, I said, I'm going to beat you every day of the week because I'm playing, I'm having fun, and I'll work hard because you're going to need to take a break, because for you, it's this hard work that you need to back off of. Whereas for me, I'm looking and I'm inspired, I'm enjoying, I'm playing, and I'm getting rejuvenated. And that's what I hear you saying, that if you really see that, it'll actually rejuvenate you in that direction.
Absolutely. Look, work is work. It's something that you do because you have to. But when you're doing something that you want to do, it's no longer work. It's funny. If I'm at my house and I am, fixing something electrical that broke, and I want to fix it myself, and I don't want to call a repairman, and I'm fixing, I'm not working. I'm enjoying what I'm doing because I wanted to do it, right?
Right.
And so the physical act we often call work, but the physical act is not work. Work is something that you do because you have to, not because you want to.
Right.
If you're physically active in something, even digging a trench, it's not work if that's what you want to do. But if somebody's telling you to do it, then it's work, right? So we have to understand the definition of work. Okay, work is something that we do because we have to, not because we want to. But you're on this podcast now because you want to, and I'm here because I want to. So I'm not working; I'm doing what I chose to do. Right, and I love to talk, so you have to stop me. And so the reason you and I are talking about this first is because small business owners have to realize that 90% of their success is based on their frame of mind, where they are mentally with regards to how they approach their business, right? If you approach your business as, oh God, I got to get up, I got to go to work, and it's your own business, forget it. Forget it. Like you said, you're going to beat them every time, Neil, because they're going to work where you're getting up and you're excited about who's my next guest. And after that guest, who else am I going to have? And how is my podcast going to grow to the biggest podcast in the world? And so your mind is excited. And you said that you're excited about what you're doing. It isn't work. It is just a task that you're performing towards the goal, which is growth of whatever your business is. And your business could be a nonprofit helping people. It doesn't matter. It's again, the goal. So yes, business owners have to have the right mindset first and foremost if they plan on being successful. Because my model only works if you have the right mindset. Otherwise, you're going to hate it the minute I start talking about it.
Yeah. Nothing else. Everything else follows your mindset, right? Everything follows. Everything you do, everything you say, everybody you surround yourself with, all of that. So with that in mind, here you're taking this, you're coming over to this business and you're taking, not the current one, the one before this, and you're taking it over and you're looking at it and you're thinking, what's going through your mind of what can I do with this, or what should I be doing with it? Where was your mindset at when you first came over? All right. So here's the question. The question is, you came to this to the previous company and you're looking to take it over and take it in a direction. What are you looking at? What are you thinking when you start that out? Because you didn't even have a system yet at that point in time, right?
No, I did not.
So you look at that and you start thinking what?
I guess my creative side started thinking, what can I do to place this company in an industry that's already saturated with companies as ours, to put this company on the map? What can I do to avoid the competition, which is already in place, has a head start, and is fiercer than me because I'm the newcomer, right? And I have not a lot of experience running a business. I come from the corporate side. And what I realized was that you have to, I started thinking of my electrical engineering background, said, take the path of least resistance, right? Electricity always takes the path of least resistance
that's right.
To ground. And so that's what popped into my head. I said, wait a minute, why don't I go and offer my services? This is before I had my model, offer my services where nobody wants to go. Right?
Yes.
And people are like, oh, well, why would you do that? Because I'm not going to have any competition, any pushback. Right? So what I did was I said, okay, I'm in the communications industry, serving telecommunication companies in their engineering and construction services, right? Said, let me call the folks over there and ask them, where do you need the help? Rather than say, I'm in South Florida, and so I'm going to ask you to give me work in South Florida, right? Which is what most small business owners do. They set up, and we'll talk about geofencing, which is the biggest mistake a small business owner can make. Geographically fence in their business in an area. But most small business owners, whatever city they're in, they go and look for work in that city. Okay, but you're usually in a big city. Most entrepreneurs start off in a big city. But what if you went to your clientele, your customers or your potential customers, and ask them, where do you need the help anywhere in the country? Where do you need the help? Because it's easier to do that than to try and ask for a piece of a pie that's already being served.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
And so where can I help you? It's an easier approach than, can you give me some of your work here where you already have everybody helping you? Most of the time they're going to tell you, well, I've already got all the help I can get. I don't know, maybe I'll throw a bone your way or something. No, I called the customers and said, anywhere in the country, where do you have the need for my services?
Yeah.
By the way, I didn't have people all over the country, so I'm gambling at this point, right? But they said, well, and I remember the first one, I was like, we need help in Wisconsin. We got an area in Wisconsin. Nobody wants to work in. It's too cold. It's too this, too that. No beggars can be choosers. I said, great. What can I do for you there? Well, we need help in X. And I can't get into the specifics because of non-disclosures and all that stuff. But basically was, we need your help doing X here in this area. I said, great. Give me 30 days to establish in that area. Remember, they don't have anybody doing the work. Don't wait 60. Don't wait 60. And so I'll take it. And I had nobody in Wisconsin. I didn't have anything. But now
You've never even been to Wisconsin at that point.
But now my focus shifted from finding the work to finding the people to do the work, which is a lot easier. So I reached out to companies that were in the same line of work that I was in Wisconsin, who could use more work, and said, hey, could you use a contract here that can, boost your revenues? Oh, sure. What do you want in return? Nothing. I'll take a small percentage. You do the work. Just got to use my company's name. You are a sub of ours. Great. And so once I realized that, I kept asking all my customers, where do you need the help? Where do you need the help? And so here's where geofencing comes in. One of the first big mistake, and I've talked about this before. One of the biggest mistakes a small business owner makes is they want to do work in the town that they live in or they've grown up in all their lives, and that's where they feel comfortable, right? You've got to train your mind. That comfort zone, you've got to get out of that comfort zone. The comfort zone has to be redrawn. And so small business owners have to realize that in order to grow your business significantly, you have to make the whole world your playing field, right? And we have stuck to the U.S. Because of the staying within the guidelines of the U.S. and it's enough to grow your business fast. So if you live in Canada or you live in the U.S., make Canada your whole geographic area. And if you live in the U.S., make the U.S. your whole geographic area. Don't make the town of the city of Miami my whole area, right? Or if you live in a big city like Toronto, okay, I'm only going to work in Toronto. Well, everybody wants to work in Toronto. It's the biggest city or one of the biggest city there, right? And so, of course, you're going to have competition. But if I go out to the countryside, there may be a need for my services there, and I don't have to place an office there. I just have to make phone calls. And in today's environment, for crying out loud, where everything is via the internet, you can find the need in the places where the need exists, correct? And you build your business that way. And yes, you can still pick up business locally, but you're picking up big business in the areas where nobody wants to go because they're dying to give it away. You get it? So geographic fencing is the first thing you have to remove.
Okay. We're going to have to cancel this podcast. We can't do this because you're giving away my blueprint right now on what I did with my my real estate business. So guys, this is cut off. No, look, you're speaking to me directly. Within the area of finance and mortgage investment. What you're talking about is exactly what I did when I got started, because I came over from working a job and then I came over to the side and I was like, everybody else here has already been doing this for this long. I'm nobody. Well, let me expand. And nobody wanted some of these other areas. And so lo and behold, everything that you are saying right now, 100% true. If you're listening right now, what this man is preaching, you need to be taking note of. So with that note,
it's so for someone like me, Neil, where I want to help and I want to help entrepreneurs and small business owners not go through the hell that I went through when they don't listen to the simplicity that it is to build this model, which is, again, no geofencing, going to where no one wants to go, and focusing on getting the business, not doing the work, right? Excuse me. When you realize how simple it is, it just boils down to you, the individual business owner, deciding this is what I want to do, and stop
Mhm.
dealing with all the excuses that you make for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I would say about that I found was it, I did that because I was like, I need to make money. And I don't know how to compete yet. When I was starting out, I didn't know how to compete with the people in this established market. Specifically, we'll talk about Toronto. I didn't know how to compete with these millions of people and all of
Yeah,
these people in the
absolutely.
industry. And here's all this business that they said they didn't even want. And so I was like, well, okay, I don't need to compete with them. Let's bring in some revenue. And then that allowed me to be able to then move into the other spaces. So to some degree, it was just about getting kicked off and how to survive initially and learn to grow for me. So I'm really
Absolutely.
interested as you continued that. So you started here, you started picking up clients and contracts in different places because you didn't restrict yourself to what everybody else does. And you probably got more lucrative contracts as a result, and you're
I
not
can,
doing the work.
in my first 3 months, we had $9 million worth of work in hand. So now the problem became who's going to do it. But it's a
Yeah.
different problem. Most business
Yes.
owners spend their whole life trying to bring new business in, and then they do the work themselves. And so they only bring enough business that they can handle themselves. So you can't grow out of that.
Yeah.
And when you work in the business and not on the business,
Right.
this is the most important statement I made. As a business owner, you must work on the business, not in the business.
Yeah.
Give you the example of the plumber. A plumber who starts a business and is still plumbing is working in the business, and they're just a self-employed individual, which is the
Yeah.
worst place to be. You might as well go back to working for a company, because as a self-employed individual, you're doing the work and you have all the burden of all the business obligations, insurance,
Yeah.
all the licenses, all of that. You
Liability.
got to deal
Yeah.
with all of that, and you're doing the work. You don't have a life. Now you're a slave of your so-called own business. That is the worst place to be. For that, I go back
Mm.
to work for somebody on an hourly rate, and at least all I have to worry about is the work. I don't have to worry about anything else, right? So if you're going to be a business owner, or you already are a business owner, start working on the business, not in the business. If you're a plumber who goes into business for himself or herself, then start to work on the model of growing your business, building the workforce, and handing it off to someone else to do the work. So you're
Mm.
working on the growth of your business, not plumbing. Um, I'll give you
Can I ask
a
you a question about that?
yes.
So I obviously, if Hayes, if you're listening right now and you love to do plumbing and that's what you want to do and you want to work for yourself, that's great. But now what you're talking about is building a business. And so if someone wants to go from, okay, great, I know how to do this task. I know how to do plumbing, but I want to build this business. I don't understand these variables of bringing people in, and how do I step into that and open up in what we would call scale? How would I scale so that now I've got people that are going to do that?
Yeah, exactly. You know the book Rich Dad Poor Dad.
It's on the shelf
Um,
right there.
it's great. There's a quote in there, right, that he talks about. And this is I use this with everybody. I do some public speaking for the SBA office, US DOT department, to small business, in person.
Yeah.
And I always ask them this very simple figure, which is in the book: how many hours of work can one person do in an 8-hour day? The answer is 8 hours, mathematically, right? The most you can do in an 8-hour workday is 8 hours.
Yeah.
Now, how many hours of work can two people do in the same 8-hour day, right? 16, and so on and so on and so on. The point in the book and the point that I'm trying to make is you cannot do it all by yourself. So, yes, you must first learn about running a business. What are the parts of the business, right? What encompasses a business? Because again, if I'm the plumber, I've only been doing plumbing all my life, so I know how to fix pipes and stuff, but I don't know anything about business. Correct. You've got to read. You've got to educate yourself. You've got to be smarter than you were before. Okay. And so you've got to listen to podcasts like yours, listen to people who have done it. So you start learning, the basic components of a business are revenue, costs, expenses, and profits in a very, very simple format. So you've got to learn that. You've got to learn the difference between costs and expenses because they're not the same thing. A small business owner usually thinks everything is the same. No, there's a difference between expenses and costs. Cost is what it costs you to produce what you sell, and expenses are the fixed expenses of the business that are needed, whether you're producing something or not. Correct? So you've got to learn the basics of business. But going back to your question, as a plumber, I'm just starting out. I have two ways of doing this. I hire someone who has experience in business to help me run the financial side of the business, or I go become real educated in this really fast, right? And again, that's where your dedication to your business comes, and you spend long nights reading and learning, which I did because I was not educated either. I learned how to get to work. Okay, now how do I make it profitable? Hell, I didn't know, right? But I got to work, the most important part, okay? And so you've got to put in the time, have the discipline, determination, dedication, desire, put in the time to learn about financing the business, not financing the business, the money side of the business, correct? Which includes financing the business. Mm-hmm. So you've got to become educated, but you have to you got to hire a staff. And the first thing you had to tell yourself as the plumber, right, is I am no longer a plumber. I am now a business owner who knows the trade of plumbing better than anyone, right? Because that's why I went into business for myself. And so I am going to build a business around what I know how to do, utilizing people to do it. And you can never, ever again pick up a wrench to do the work. Because once you pick up the wrench, you're back to working in the business. In my example, I was a lineman, a telephone lineman, climbing poles, fiber splicer, cable placer, all of those things, right? But the minute I became a business leader and a business owner, I never again touched it. And when I saw there was a job that needed help, and I knew how to fix it, but I didn't go fix it. The people I hired to do it had to fix it. I can give guidance as a leader. Hey, I advise that the best thing to do is this and this and this, but I didn't go do it because the minute I did it, I took my focus off my business. I give you direction, I give you directives, I give you timelines, right? I give you support, but I do not give you my physical hands-on work because then I'm back to being the laborer and not the guy leading or the woman leading the business. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
sorry, I'm listening. I'm like taking notes. I'm like, this is great because I love your mental attitude right there. Just about I'm not picking anything up. You're not picking up that wrench again, and you kind of slapped me across the face there because I was thinking in terms of real estate. There are portions of it that I enjoy, and I was like, Neil, you need to stop picking up the wrench. You want to take it the next level? You're going to have to train somebody else, and you're going to have to let them become the expert now in doing that portion of it.
Exactly. Now, here's the other misconception the small business owners have, because I run into this all the time. Well, if I hire people, there goes all my profits. No.
Right.
Wrong. The stronger your team, the bigger your team, the more you can produce. It is not about making 50, 60% profit on one job. It's about making 15% profit on 100 jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. When you do the math, you realize you're making more money. It's about making money. It's not about making a lot of money on one job. So the more staff you have, the more those 8 hours can do for you, right? And
Yep.
so, yeah, you don't start and have like we have a whole accounting team and a whole HR department. No, you don't get there right away. You build that slowly, but your workforce has to be huge immediately. And you do that via your subcontractors. Again, you are finding the work. You are
Yeah.
finding the work and you find the formula mathematically that makes you the right amount of money. And understand this, small business owner, when you start and nobody knows you, your profit margins got to be smaller. You cannot say, okay, this plumbing company has been around for 100 years and is publicly traded and makes 40% profit. I should be charging the same thing because that's the industry standard. No, you can't. You're just getting started. So first of all, you have to have better pricing than anybody else because nobody knows you. That's the bottom line. And you have to pay better than anybody else because nobody wants to work for you because nobody knows you. In your example, Neil, in real estate, you may have to, or you may have had to in the past, given up higher percentages of commission just to attract people to work with you because they don't know you.
Yes.
They don't know you, and they may know you, but they don't know your ability to pay.
Yes.
And so you've got to incentivize them by giving them a better deal than the rest of the world. Don't lie to yourself and think that you are equal just because you're a great plumber. You're the best plumber in the world. Don't think that you are as good as Roto-Rooter or one of those companies, right? You're not. You have to realize your place in your industry and then take advantage of it in the sense of utilizing it to your best interest by creating a model that works for you, not mimicking a model of a large corporation that just doesn't fit your mold.
I love what you're talking about here, and obviously, we've reached our time, and so I definitely want to have you back so we can continue to speak about this. But and the scaling is important, and I think it's really important for small business and self-employed people to understand this piece because so many of us sacrifice our time doing these things, not understanding how to make this shift, right? Not understanding how we need to change mentally to be able to make this shift, and as a result, so often self-employed and small business owners end up breaking down at some point. And if you've not built what you're talking about, there isn't the place to even be able to break down, right? Because
Right.
they break down and everything stops, the income stops. And what we're seeing, this podcast, I really started not intentionally, but out of the pandemic and people messaging me on social media saying, what do we do? And I thought someone needs to speak into it. And so what I love about what you're sharing here is that this is you coming from where you've come from, right? You coming from down low and being able to build. And a lot of people just don't have that uh, mentality, that experience to be able to do that and know where to go because we are in a world where people are inundated with, oh, we can tell you how to do all of this stuff, but yet they've never done it themselves. And so what I love is that you're giving real grassroots from the bottom advice and direction. Let's call it direction, not advice, because this is what you've done and how you've scaled. And I think it's really motivating because it really talks about the leadership that you had to take yourself first, and then you were able to apply that to your business. And so, Karel, I definitely want to thank you so much. We're gonna, if you guys are listening, this is part one. We're gonna have a part two, and we are going to have Karel come back, Mr. Gomez, come back and teach us some more about how to scale and how to build your business from zero to, you said now you've got what, over 400
Over
people in the
400.
business?
Our team is closer to 500 strong.
Oh my goodness.
without counting our subcontractors. And, we operate in 22 states today,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
And if you're
Uh,
watching this on YouTube, look at how good this man looks. I mean, you know,
Thank
actually, it's funny.
you.
When I saw you, I thought you look like you remind me of a football coach, Marvin Lewis. You look a little bit like Marvin Lewis, but you look in better health than he does. So,
Thank you.
uh, eh,
Thank you. Thank you.
Karel,
Look, I
I really
appreciate it.
appreciate you coming on. I want to have you back again. We're gonna make it happen, and we're gonna do round 2.
Neil, I would love to be back on your show. I'd love to sit back down with you and talk about scaling and how you scale a business and grow it. There's a model. There's part of the model is about that, and I love to talk about it and help our listening audience of small business owners and self-employed individuals move into becoming small business owners, not become a self-employed individual, and just really reach the dream that they had when they went into business for themselves. Because again, if you and I can do it, anyone can.
Wow, love it. Well, guys, if you're stoked, if you're excited by what we're talking about, you're gonna have to come back for part 2 and listen as Karel really shares with us and breaks down this next part of scaling your business and growing massive profits, going talking in the millions rather than dreaming about the millions. So,
Yeah,
Karel,
definitely.
thank you so much.
Thank you,
We
Neil.
definitely look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you. Take care. Have a wonderful day. God bless everybody.
All right. Thanks a lot. Leadership to Wealth podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you again for part 2 with Karel Gomez.